Hello everyone, hope you're doing okay today. Today is, for us, spending time in the book of Joshua. We're going to be in Joshua chapter 11 today, talking about the conquest of the northern coalition of kings. Really interesting. If we look at Joshua's strategy, he had a pretty good strategy. Coming in the middle, cutting down the south, and then hitting in the north where they're the most strongest. Anyways, let's read this together so we can get an idea of what's going on in his military tactics and his wins and loses and everything else too. So, let's take a look. Joshua chapter 11. This is what it says. When Jabin, king of Hazor, heard of this, like what happened in the earlier chapters, he sent word to Jabub, king of Madon, and the king of Shimron and Ashaph. That's a hard one to pronounce. And to the northern kings who were in the mountains of the Abra south of Kinnereth, in the western foothills, and in Naphoth, Dor on the west. To the Canaanites in the east and to the west, to the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Jebusites in the hill country, and to the Hivites below Hermon in the region of Mizpah. They came out with all their troops, and a large number of horses and chariots, a huge army, as numerous as the sand on the seashore. All the kings joined forces and made camp together at the waters of Merom to fight against Israel. The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them, because this time tomorrow I will hand them all of them over to Israel, slain. You are to hamstring their horses and burn their chariots." So Joshua and his whole army came against them suddenly at the waters of Merom and attacked them, and the Lord gave them into the hand of Israel. They defeated them and pursued them all the way to the greater Sidon, to the Mizrephoth Miam, and to the valley of Mizpah to the east, until no survivors were left. Joshua did to them as the Lord had directed. He hamstrung their horses and buried their chariots. At that time, Joshua turned back and captured Hazor and put its king to the sword. Hazor had been head of all these kingdoms. Everyone in it they put to the sword. They totally destroyed them, not sparing anything that breathed, and he burned up Hazor himself. Joshua took all these royal cities and their kings and put them to the sword. He totally destroyed them as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded. Yet Israel did not burn any of the cities built on their mounds, except Hazor, which Joshua burned. The Israelites carried off for themselves all the plunder and livestock of these cities, but all the people they put to the sword until completely destroyed them, not sparing anyone that breathed. As the Lord commanded his servant Moses, so Moses commanded Joshua, and Joshua did it. He left nothing undone of all that the Lord commanded Moses. So Joshua took this entire land, the hill country, all the Negev, the whole region of Goshen, the western foothills, the Arabah, and the mountains of Israel with their foothills. From Mount Halak, which rises towards Seir, to Baal Gad in the valley of Lebanon. Below Mount Hermon, he captured all their kings and struck them down, putting them to death. Joshua waged war against all these kings for a long time, except for the Hivites living in Gibeon. Not one city made a treaty of peace with all the Israelites, who took them all in battle. For it was the Lord himself who hardened their hearts to wage war against Israel, so that he may destroy them totally, exterminating them without mercy, as the Lord had commanded Moses. At that time Joshua went and destroyed the Anakites from the hill country, from Hebron, Debir, and Anab, from the hill country of Judah, and from all the hill country of Israel. Joshua totally destroyed them and their towns. No Anakites were left in Israelite territory. Only in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod did any survive. So Joshua took the entire land, just as the Lord had directed Moses, and he gave it to an inheritance to Israel according to their tribal divisions. Then the land had rest from war. And that is chapter 11. There's a lot of things that we could look in this chapter. And this chapter talks about a few things. One, we go back to the people who were living in that region at the time. They had an opportunity to turn back to God for the longest time, but they didn't. Hundreds and hundreds of years. The only people who were willing to make ice cream. The only country that was willing to make any sort of peace treaty was the Gibeonites. They came to Israel, and they wanted to live in peace with Israel. But none of the other nations were willing to do that. They were ready to fight. And the same thing comes here with us when we're living our lives too. Sometimes when we're in our lives, in order for us to eradicate sin in our lives, we have to eradicate We have to push it out hard, and Satan will do a last-ditch effort to throw everything at us, plus the kitchen sink, so that we could fail. And for us to mingle and commingle with sin, it becomes dangerous because it gives us an opportunity to fall back into it. But one of the things that God has told Joshua here is what? Do not be afraid. I will give them over to you. And that's important for us to see that God has promised us, even in our lives, in everyday living, that we have the ability to overcome sin if we are willing to stand firm. And even then, too, verse 9, Joshua did what the Lord said. He hamstringed their horses and burned their chariots. That means he, broke the legs of the horses and chariots so that no one can use or utilize any of those sinful things that were going against Israel. And for us too, sometimes in our lives, we don't take or cut our losses when it comes to sin. We keep going towards it because there's some benefit, and that's there. But the reality is, we need to cut clean. We need to make a firm stand. We need to eradicate sin in our life, because when there's a little bit of sin, it's like yeast. It will grow if we're not careful. And then we see here that the Lord, he made their hearts harden, but I think more so God allowed them to continue to be the way they are because they have chosen that path, and to allow these people to live with the Israelites will contaminate the Israelites in their obedience to God. And the question that comes down for us is that what is holding us back from obeying God fully in our lives? What's holding us back from doing the right thing? Some of us, we are entangled in things that we shouldn't be doing, and it holds us back in all sorts of levels. But then one of the things we need to do is we need to eradicate it strong, push it to the side. And not with our own strength, with God's strength. What does it look like to live with God's strength? It means to pray to Him, to keep Him close. And in the midst of sin and struggle and evilness that goes against us, He gives us the promises that He will be with us and we will overcome it. But that requires us to what? To listen to the word of the Lord. Not do whatever we want, but listen to God. And so Joshua did what he was told, and he was blessed. And was able to do what God told him to do, divide the land up for all the people of Israel. And now they have their land that had been promised. This is the first time the Israelites have ever received any sort of land promise like this. And now they have it, and now they're able to live in it because that's the promise God gave them. And God used them to do what He called them to do. So, my friends, what's holding you back? What's holding me back? What's holding all of us back? What's holding the church back from doing what God has called us to do? To live a perfect, or not a perfect, but a pure life. A life without sin. Something to think about. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.